Uh, when you just eat and then you lay down in the bed and you're just like, oh, I got like the itis like crazy right now. Mm, I shouldn't even be making this video. I should be taking a wonderful nap. But anyway, I wanted to make this video because, you know, I've already spoken on the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I spoke on it last year, and I told y'all he was not going to be charged. I made three recent videos talking about how much he's not going to be charged. And the one thing that I thought he was going to get charged with, the judge threw it out, and it wouldn't have even mattered because it was a misdemeanor, because that's the laws in Wisconsin. Although I don't really understand the how the exemption of the law works, because apparently people are saying it's poorly written. I went over there, I pulled it up, and confirmed that it's poorly written. People are misconstruing, what it says about, 16-inch barrels versus, short barrel rifles, and it's all over the place. But I'm pretty sure that that exemption was not put in place so that a 17-year-old can go, run to a protest with a rifle. And that's one of the areas where, I'm listening to a lot of white people, and that's where, the white nationalism, comes in for me. The white supremacy and the racism comes in for me, listening to them, defend Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, not actually, I shouldn't say defend Kyle Rittenhouse. Defend Kyle Rittenhouse through the idea that he was 100% in the right, in being there, and it's all self-defense, and that he had every right to, be out there with the rifle. And I'm like, okay, so again, we're advocating for 17-year-olds to open carry rifles. I mean, I looked at the laws, and I'm familiar with most of the laws around the country, and you would be hard pressed to find a law that says or allows a 17-year-old to open carry a rifle. There are hunting exemptions, but Kyle Rittenhouse was not hunting. And that wasn't even his rifle. Dominique Black is the one that gave him the rifle. So Dominique Black might face some charges. I doubt it. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. I could get into that. You go around, you look at the comment section. The white nationalists are having a field day. You see comments about, the joggers. Right? That's their homage to the Ahmaud Arbery case, right? So basically, joggers is the new code word for niggas. If you don't know, that's why, because they said that Ahmaud Arbery was just jogging, and again, the white racists, they don't want to believe that. And so, the Kyle Rittenhouse that's like the case that the white nationalists want to do a victory lap on, and then apparently the Ahmaud Arbery case is the one that black people are going to do a victory lap on. Personally, I think all the people that are doing this shit are stupid, but that's just me. But I wanted to make this video to speak to black people, because I had a conversation with somebody earlier, and I swear, some days I'm like, you should have just been a lawyer, dude. But anyway, so we're talking about, the black people and the Democrats, and are all up in arms. And me, I get real irritated because, you go on MSNBC and CNN, and they got, Maya Wiley, up there, and she's talking her bullshit, and all these other black women on MSNBC and CNN talking their bullshit. don't know anything about firearms. You got this one lady, she's up there on, I think it was like ABC or something, or CBS or something, and she's up there talking. Reno May has it on his channel, and she says, it's a right, that Kyle Rittenhouse, he had a rifle, he had an AR-15. Then she immediately calls it a shotgun, and then describes it as it can kill you with one blow. And I'm like, all guns can kill you with one. Well, like, what are you talking about, lady? So there's all this, what do you want to call it? Sensationalism. There's all this fear mongering, playing on the liberals' ignorance of firearms, because liberals disproportionately live in the metropolitan areas where there tends to be significantly stricter gun laws. And this is the whole problem with what I hear coming from black people talking about, oh, if this was a black person, they would have thrown them under the jail. And Kyle Rittenhouse got away with murder because he's white. And the court system is the system of white supremacy, blah, 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 blah. Right? And again, yes, we know white people have a horrendous, terrible track record of racial injustice against black people in the legal system. And so black people have no reason to give white people, or the system of white supremacy, or white people as a collective, the benefit of the doubt. They got a shitty ass track record. So that's why black people are extremely skeptical of, the white government or the court systems, the white court systems. Right. But here's the thing. Right. This is I need black people to get out of their state of emotionalism and listen to what I'm about to lay out. And I've talked about this before when it comes to how we vote. Now, the issue that I identified, and pointed out to this person is, I said, well, look at the way that black people vote, right? You're saying that, I'm like, me typically doing what I always do. Fuck it, let's go with that. Okay. So you're saying that Kyle Rittenhouse got off because he's white, and if it was a black person, the black person would be going to jail because, racism. Okay. What lens are you looking at this through? And the reason I ask that is, it's like, what I should say is, what state? Right? This is how I was breaking it down. Example, like if you look at MSNBC, CNN, like where are they based? Right? New York, LA. These are liberal enclaves. Basically, the left has completely, abolished the Second Amendment, made gun control laws to the point that you don't have a Second Amendment right. In New York, you basically don't have a Second Amendment right. They got all type of red tape, right? It's cost prohibitive. Again, they don't need to say no niggas need apply, because they've made it cost prohibitive. And for some reason, black people accept being discriminated against economically, but they don't like being discriminated against if you say color explicitly. But for some reason, when white people can backdoor, their racism, or, the white liberals can backdoor, their racism, and basically put a sticker price on it that they know that you can't afford, black people just don't see it. They don't get it. You know what I mean? I mean, what is the cost of getting a gun permit in New York? I know it's high. I know it's way up there. Then when you go to, more conservative states, the price for a permit or to get a license, or, for states that have firearms ID cards and stuff like that, they're reasonable, and they're intentionally made to be reasonable. You see? But looking at New York, basically the Democrats come through and they pass ungodly amounts of gun control. And these gun control laws affect both black people and white people essentially the same, especially in comparison to these more conservative states. So, and I've warned black people about this. You go off, you vote Democrat. Democrats come through and they pass gun control on top of gun control on top of gun control on top of gun control, which pretty much bars any law-abiding black person from being able to exercise their Second Amendment rights, right? And New York is really funny because, you know, and, you know, people get their feathers ruffled, you know, for saying this, but it's the reality, okay? Because I was watching this clip and it had 4 black women up there and like 1 Jewish guy. Looked Jewish to me, right? And it's like, I've always asked the question. I'm like, why is it that Jewish people don't support the Second Amendment? Right? It's like black people, we had slavery. Jewish people had what happened to them in Europe. And I'm like, why don't they support that? Right? You got to look at the demographics of New York. Right? And, you know, some people would argue that, you know, well, Jewish people are, you know, they have a lot of wealth in New York and they own a lot of things and they have hospitals named after themselves and this, that, and the third, right? So they got, you know, look at Michael Bloomberg. He's got $60 billion last time I checked. Do you really think that, you know, even though I'm talking about, you know, oh, well, we're minorities together in America. Yeah, but they're in a different position than black people. And it's like, do you really think that they want to be walking around New York surrounded by the poors, you know, with their CCW and guns? This is why New York is, you know, pushing back hard on, you know, the Supreme Court and why they, you know, just keep constantly, persistently dodging, you know, exercising of the Second Amendment. Right? Because, you know, I'm just saying, you know, certain demographics don't live in high crime areas and they have substantial amounts of wealth. So they don't necessarily want to see people exercising their rights. It's a city, it's a lot of people there. They're all jam-packed on each other. Right? So it's like, from the perspective of black people and where black people are living and how black people are living and the conditions in which black people are living in, creating more laws that make it more difficult for law-abiding black people to get guns does not help black people in the high crime areas in which they live. Where other groups and other demographics, they live far away from you. The police serve them. They don't serve you. Okay. And then again, when you want to talk about that whole dynamic of class and economic tribalism and whatnot, black people are really the ones that get targeted when it comes to not only we don't want them to have guns, but also the ones that get targeted when it comes to, you know, the enforcement of, you know, these sorts of gun laws. Not saying that we don't have a gun crime problem in the black community. We most certainly do, which is directly tied to, you know, economics and, you know, us not controlling the economic landscape of our own communities, not able to facilitate jobs and economic opportunities for the young men, so they resort to crime, right? But the thing is that black people constantly go out here and they vote Democrat, and when they vote Democrat, right, the Democrats come in and pass more gun control laws. You see, and when the Democrats pass those gun control laws, everybody who falls in the net of getting caught with an illegal firearm, I mean, no matter how, you know, minuscule of a violation, they're going to throw the book at you. They're going to put you under the jail. You know, mere possession, they'll throw you under the jail. You know, whatever the exemption was for Kyle Rittenhouse, or the, you know, again, I don't know how it was an exemption if the judge had to throw it out. But again, even if he was charged with it, it's a misdemeanor because that's how the laws are written in Wisconsin. Their laws are more lax. But I'm saying in blue states, they're not more lax. They'll throw the book at you. And so when black people are like, oh, if it was a black person, oh, he would have got the book thrown at them. There's more than one factor as to why that statement is untrue. And the primary factor is that Democrats in blue states throw the book at everybody. And so to compare it to a state like Wisconsin, and here's the other problem. Black people don't exercise the Second Amendment like that in certain areas of the United States because, the left has, killed the gun culture. There's no idea of carrying a firearm. Like, it's not in people's psyche. There's a lot of people around this country that when they get up in the morning, they grab their cell phone, their keys, their wallet, and their pistol, and they put it on their hip and they walk out the door and they carry it for the rest of the day. I mean, obviously probably not to work, but I'm saying they carry it for the majority of the day. They walk around with it. Let's say it's a Saturday. They're going around. Everybody, not everybody, but at least 30 to 20% of the population in states that have shall issue of those people are carrying a firearm. Whether it's Florida, Texas, whatever. It's only about 20 to 30% of people. People think that, that if in a state where it's shall issue, like 80% of people are carrying. A lot of people they're just not into the whole Second Amendment thing. It's some people, a lot of people have this mentality that, unless something happens to them, they're not going to exercise their, Second Amendment rights like that. Like, something bad has to happen before they feel that they need a gun. That's the majority of that's how the majority of people think. The 20%, the 30% take the initiative, and they're the ones who say to themselves, I want to be able to have protection, just in case something happens. They're the just in case people. Right. But I'm saying that, in the liberal states, black people don't exercise their Second Amendment rights. The whole concept of anybody walking around with a gun is like, there's like this ooh-ness about it. And I see this come out when I look at these, liberal commentators speaking on, guns, where in other states, what is normal is just totally out of the question, for the liberals in liberal states. Oh my God, he's got a gun. Oh my God. Oh my God. They start going crazy. Where in other states, it's like, no big deal. Like, it's like, oh, what you got? Oh, I got this. Oh, but that's not how liberal states are. So the second factor is the fact that a lot of black people don't exercise their Second Amendment rights like that, right? So in any given state, you have, like I said, that, 20 to 30% of people who are carrying. Sometimes it's less than that. But how many black people are actually carrying out of that 20 to 30%? Again, remember, the black community is a matriarchy. Too many of us were raised in Big Mama's house. Big Mama's anti-gun, just like all the black women that you see going up on MSNBC and CNN. So there's a lot of black people other than Ray Ray and Pookie in the black community. There's not a whole bunch of, law-abiding, card-carrying black men and black women. Again, depends on where you live. But there's a lot of states where that doesn't go down. Again, you throw in, white Jesus and Christianity on a lot of black people, and you'll get a lot of those black people that are like, oh, I don't believe in guns. Jesus said turn the other cheek, So you'll get a lot of that. And because of that, and I've talked about this before, there's not going to be a whole bunch of interactions of, that you're going to be able to, that are similar to the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. Like, people will be like, oh, well, I bet if, this happened or that happened, the outcome would be like this. Well, there's more white people walking around with CCWs that if something goes down, they're prepared to deal with that situation and possibly shoot somebody and defend their life. There's less black people who are legally card carrying CCW holders that, would have the same situation. In order for there to be an interaction with law enforcement, they killed somebody, and then, they got to go to court or whatever, or they don't get charged, or they get charged. Like the percentage of black people that are in that type of position is far few and in between relative to white people. White people own way more guns than black people. So you're going to see more examples of white people with guns and using guns defensively than black people with guns and using guns defensively. We're not talking about Ray Ray and Pookie and gangbangers and all that shit shooting back and forth at each other. I'm talking about black people who, the police show up, here's my ID, here's my card, the man tried to break into my house, I was in fear of my life. I'm calling USCCA, to be able to, cover myself, right? These sorts of situations. I saw Maj Touré. He brought up the, you know, um, Kenneth Walker, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who shot one round at the police officer and he was arrested, and then, the cops, they, after the one cop got shot in the leg, they all, shot back into the apartment and killed Breonna Taylor, right? And, he was in jail for quite some time until some people made us think about it. I mean, he fired one shot, cop got hit in the leg, and then they tried to charge him with like trying to kill a police officer, which was bullshit. If you ask me, do I think there was some racist bullshit, as it pertains to the way that Kenneth Walker was treated afterwards, because the cops they had already screwed up and everything else. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But again, that's not even a real good example because, I mean, Maj's point was the fact that he got exonerated. I would make the point that Kenneth Walker didn't kill anybody. So we don't have an apples to apples comparison in that situation. Kyle Rittenhouse killed two people and, maimed another one. So I wouldn't compare those two situations. If he wants to make that point, what we would need to see is a black person who kills multiple people, in a defensive situation. We actually do have an example of that. We do have an example of them using the gun. They killed one person, but we have the example of the black man who was in the IHOP, who was confronted by three white supremacists. The one white supremacist punched him in the face, and he pulled out his gun, and the guy came back in and tried to fight him again, and, he got popped a couple times. They tried to drive him to the hospital. He ran in and ran out after getting shot. I guess it was all adrenaline, but he died. He died in the vehicle, and they crashed their vehicle in, his racist friends. They crashed the vehicle in trying to, take him to the hospital. I think they ran a red light or something like that. But that is an example. But, you never hear the left talk about that. They want to tell you about the brother in the IHOP who disarmed a mass shooter, with nothing but his bare hands. Yeah, they'll encourage that shit. But in terms of, card carrying, law abiding black people exercising the Second Amendment, no. Why do you think Joy Reid jumped down Coleon Lamar's throat when he had the conversation with Killer Mike? You see, like, black people go out here, you vote for the party that's anti-gun. They're not pro-black, they're anti-gun. Y'all think that because, the left is up there and they're screaming racism and everything else, that somehow makes the left suddenly care about black people and they're pro-black when they're really just anti-gun. They hate guns. And these are the politicians, these are the people that you vote into office, right? Then they pass a slew of, gun laws, which will have you caught in their net. Right, you see this guys traveling, going through the TSA, going through a JFK and shit like that, and then they get caught up and they get jammed up, and New York throws the book at them. This is what happened to Jewel Santana, even though he was a prohibited person. So I guess I really can't use him as an example. But these are the sorts of things that black people. Like, they want to talk about how they're being unfairly treated by the justice system or the judicial system. But the judicial system, the DA, the judges, you know what I mean? The essentially the prosecutors, all these are people that black people put, that lean in the political direction that black people put in place. So if you're complaining about how it's racist or it's not fair in New York and if this was a white person, then it would be different. First off, again, that comparison can't be made because you can't take the politics that you vote for, in the liberal cities that you vote for, and then transplant them over to a conservative state that has a whole different set of politics, right? And I'm saying even if you did, right? Again, the way that the liberals move, anybody that has anything to do with guns, they're throwing the book at them. There are plenty of examples of white people going through LaGuardia, going through JFK, and they get slammed, with some bullshit ass, unlawful possession of a firearm, and they got to go through all this stuff, right? Same thing in New Jersey. I don't know if y'all remember, but there was a woman by the name of Shaneen Allen. Shaneen Allen went to I believe it was a birthday party in Atlantic City. Okay. She got robbed a couple times in Philly. She had her CCW. She got her permit. I don't know why her friends and family or whoever else didn't tell her, yo, don't go into Jersey. But anyway, she went into Jersey because Jersey doesn't recognize any other state's permits. This is the whole reason why they wanted to pass national reciprocity. So your state, your license in Pennsylvania is good in New York, and your license in New York is good in Pennsylvania. Right. But again, liberals, their whole goal is to frustrate the exercise of the Second Amendment and try. Oh, well, the way that they screen people is different than the way that we screen people. And, this shouldn't be a race to the bottom, a race to the having the most lax gun laws, So again, they want to frustrate it. Meanwhile, when it comes to legalization of marijuana, they're like, well, the state of New York shares a border with Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania's legalizing marijuana, and so therefore we as New York should legalize marijuana because we share the same border, and there's really nothing that we can do about it because we border each other. But then when it comes to the gun laws, it's like, oh hell no, we don't care what Pennsylvania's doing. Oh hell no. You see what I'm saying? Like, so we don't care what what other states border New York. I don't know what Connecticut, freaking, Vermont and all that. That's way too high up. Maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, these are it's just so funny. Again, the whole process is to be anti-gun. That's the whole process. We're anti-gun. We don't like guns. Throw the book at everybody. So the idea that a white person would be treated differently in the city of New York is total bullshit. It's total bullshit. Now, if you want to argue if they got money, or the people who are able to get permits, right, who are people who know judges and are sleeping with judges, or who are substantially wealthy, like Donald Trump. Think about Donald Trump's temperament. And Donald Trump has a New York license to carry a firearm. Think about that. Think about Donald Trump's temperament. And yet he gets a gun. You see what I'm saying? So New York is just corrupt through and through. But again, black people, y'all go out there, you listen to the dog whistle. Oh, don't vote for them. They's racist. Right? And then you go and you vote for the same party that you've been voting for since LBJ, and then they come through and they pass more guns. Oh, black people, we don't want to address the poverty that's in your community, so the crime's going to keep going up in your community, and every year we're going to come back to you and tell you that you need to vote for us and not vote for the Republicans because they's racist. And after you vote for us, we're going to pass more gun control laws to make it even more restrictive so that, the people in the community don't have any other option, to protect themselves. And you got to rely on the NYPD, which doesn't give a fuck about you because we only police Manhattan. We don't care about what's going on in the other boroughs outside of Manhattan. All the wealthy people, again, different demographic. They're all in Manhattan. You see? And this is what you all continue to vote for. And then, again, you got your MSNBC and all that, the voices and political people that go up there and, again, convince you to try to keep voting Democrat. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have some racist police departments in the South. We all know that they exist, and they still carry that Jim Crow attitude. Okay, but in the South, in those states, there's a lot of black people who carry and exercise their Second Amendments. So again, with how they deal with the laws, again, we would have to have more examples of black people, who not only legally carry but use a gun defensively to make a statement like, oh well, I bet if this was a black person, they would be under the jail and Kyle Rittenhouse gets off. I think that people are not looking at the whole situation appropriately when it comes to the different demographics. We vote Democrat. We don't vote for gun rights. You want to it's like black people want to sit there and say, well, how come he can do this and how come he? Because he's in a state that actually has gun rights. Now again, I don't agree with the whole him being 17 and all that. If he was 18, again, like I said, this wouldn't even be a topic of conversation. Not for me. Y'all can say what you want. Again, Rosenbaum, registered sex offender, Grosskreutz, felon in possession of a firearm. Kyle, ran away multiple times. And they were followed. Rosenbaum followed him. Again, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I never understood though. I'm going to, give chase to a man with a rifle, or a teenager with a rifle. I don't care whether it's a teenager or a man. I'm not following anybody, with a rifle if I don't have a rifle too. I just didn't get that, and again, this is why I always say that if there was ever a war between liberals versus conservatives, conservatives will win. You ain't got no firepower. The conservatives are out there where the breadbasket is. The conservatives are disproportionately the truck drivers. You know what I mean? So if they wanted to starve the liberal cities, they could easily do so. And then again, you get all these like liberals that are all like triggered and incensed, when it comes to certain things. But I'm like, but you ain't gonna do shit. You don't even have the power to do shit. You're so mad about, oh, they did this and that, and we're gonna solve this by preventing all of them from having guns. I'm like, they ain't giving up their shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just look at liberals like liberals have like a very female way of looking at situations and handling situations. You know what I mean? Where they think that they can somehow, appeal to some higher, authority, and that they're going to handle it as opposed to handling it themselves. That's how I look at liberals. Yeah. The whole Kyle, the whole Kyle Rittenhouse situation. I just look at black people like, you're whining about the way that you would be treated based off of the laws that you actually support putting in place. You know what I mean? It's like you're trying to put, New York laws on Wisconsin or on other, states that don't have those type of laws. It reminds me of, that woman that was bitching about how come Sean Connery is able to date younger women, but, younger men won't date older women. And I was like, that's not men's fault. That's women's fault. I guess you need to go over there and start talking to women and say that they don't need to date Sean Connery. You know what I mean? Stop trying to equalize things that can't be equalized. Women will date older men, younger men, the majority of which don't prefer to date older women. And it's always been that way. You know what I mean? But she was bitching that, it wasn't fair. It's not fair. And I'm just like, sorry, that's the way that it is. Just because women, you can't equalize everything. Women, are attracted to men for different reasons than men are attracted to women. That's what it is. And when it comes to the gun laws, liberals, blue states, they're super anti-gun, and some of you all are emotionally trying to import your whole concept of guns and the Second Amendment and what gun is evil and which one is too big and, oh, you don't really need that and everything else. And they're trying to import that into other states. I was listening to Amazing Lucas the other day, and I was just totally disappointed. I had to leave whatever the chat was. I was totally disappointed because, Amazing Lucas is from California. And I pretty much guarantee that, he doesn't even have a firearm. So he was up there talking about guns and what they need to do, and people should go through extensive training and background checks and everything else. And he had this woman that was from Maryland, and she was a gun shop owner. And I was like, oh, we have an expert on the line, right? But it was disagreement day, and so Lucas went up there and just his ego was all in it. And I'm like, yo, you're not listening to what she's saying. She's telling you she doesn't trust the government. Plain and simple. And black people shouldn't trust the government. The way that black people run around screaming racism, black people should be the most armed population in America that there is, but yet somehow we're not. And the thing is like, the question that I always pose to people, I was like, okay, you want to talk about reasonable gun laws? When have Democrats ever loosened gun laws? Got rid of the ones that were unreasonable? You know what I'm saying? Like just unreasonable gun laws, get rid of them. No, they want to enact harsher and harsher and more stringent gun restrictions. And then when their laws are just absolutely ridiculous, they'll say, we're the model for the country. That's what they'll do. New York will do that. California will do that. Hawaii will do that. New Jersey will do that. Maryland will do that. We're a model for the country. Like example, like New Jersey has a 10-round magazine restriction. It was 15 and then they dropped it down to 10, right? 10-round magazine restriction. Like that's going to do anything, right? And it's like they'll say, well, we're going to be the model for other states. The other states are around New Jersey that are like Pennsylvania. It's not going to change its magazine capacity because New Jersey thinks that it's going to be the model. These are just talking points. We're the model. And the stupid thing is like, so you restrict, again, the law-abiding citizens in New Jersey from having, let's say, 30-round magazines. But yet, if a person wanted to break the law and get 30-round magazines, they could easily drive into Pennsylvania or Delaware or any other state. I mean, get in a car and drive. It's still America. It's still one country. You go across an invisible line, a border, and you go and you buy what you want to buy and you bring it back in the state. Is it illegal? Oh yeah, sure, it's illegal. And New Jersey will throw the book at you. You know what I mean? But they're not stopping anything. The whole process is to frustrate the Second Amendment. Same thing with California, where Amazing Lucas lives. They have a handgun roster. Massachusetts also has, it's not necessarily a handgun roster, but guns being sold in Massachusetts have to have particular specifications. They have to have a 10-pound trigger, which is atrocious. And they have to have a loaded chamber indicator, right? Because treating every firearm as if it's loaded is apparently not good enough, right? But California has a handgun roster. And the handgun roster basically says that these are the guns that the state deems, are safe for California. Now, never, California hasn't expanded that list. So California has based the guns that they originally put on there. I don't know. I think they maybe added like 2 guns, but I really don't think they've added any guns. So if a new gun comes out, they're supposed to review it and then determine whether they can put it on the handgun roster list. No, because the liberals don't like it. They don't like guns, period. You know what I mean? They're like, well, the list stands as is. So every new gun that has come out for like the last 15, 20 years, they can't, the Californians don't have access to it. Even if it's the same brand style of gun, like example, like a Gen 3 Glock. They can have like a Gen 3 Glock, but they can't have a Gen 5 Glock. Shit like that. It's just a different generation. One has slide cuts. The other one doesn't have slide cuts, right? They made improvements to the design of the firearm, but it's a freaking Glock 19 is a Glock 19. Doesn't matter whether it's a Gen 3 or a Gen 5, right? But again, it's designed to frustrate the gun owners to whittle it down to make it so onerous, so taxing, of a process to go through, so cost prohibitive that essentially nobody is exercising, their Second Amendment rights. And Amazing Lucas brought that attitude into the conversation. Well, we need more restrictions, and we need more of this, and we need more of that, and people should be proficient with a gun. And it was clearly that Kyle House was proficient with that gun. I've already brought this up before about how it's always, we need to have people that are proficient with firearms, and they shouldn't be able to handle a firearm unless they're proven to be proficient, with it. And I'd marginally agree with that when it comes to handguns and aiming a handgun, because handguns are more difficult to shoot than, a rifle. Rifle's easier to shoot. You have multiple points of contact. You got your cheek weld, you got the stock on your shoulder. You know what I mean? You're holding the gun from two different other points in each hand, right? So it's easier to shoot a rifle than it is to shoot a handgun, right? But it always amazes me that when it comes to mass shooter, like Adam Lanza, it's like, oh, you need extensive training. Everybody needs extensive training. But then as soon as you get a mass shooter that picks up a rifle, this rifle made them a super lethal ultra killer. And it's like, how, if the man has no training, how does the gun make him a super lethal ultra killer? It's the preferred weapon of killers. It makes them more efficient at killing. And I'm like, but I thought they don't have the efficiency because they're not properly trained. You see, so what they're trying to do is, again, trying to, frustrate the access to firearms. And again, that'll be another avenue of being cost prohibitive for black people. Oh, you got to have, 60 hours of firearms training before we allow you, to have this to put in your home. Right? How much is that going to cost? Oh, you got to get an instructor that we approve, and it has to be at one of our locations. Okay, well, how many locations? Well, we only have 2 locations. One in Northern California and one in Southern California. And then, since, everybody who wants a gun in the state wants to go through that process, then there's like a 10-month waiting list for you to join one of these classes. You see, and again, since they don't want people to have it anyway, they can do all type of things to frustrate it. Just like in New Jersey. Oh, you want a handgun? Oh, you got to go to the police station every time you want to go and get a handgun. And then, well, at least I think, some municipalities have made it online, but other places, again, they do what they want to do. Oh, well, you got to come in, and we are only open from 10 to 2. 10 to 2? That's when everybody's working, right? And you would think that they would be more accommodating for the working people, so working people can get their permits, because, right, if you wanted anybody to be able to have a gun, right, you would think that it would be the working people, right? So you would be more accommodating for them because, hey, he's working, he's just trying to protect himself. He has a job, he's working, hey, no problem. Right? Those are the people that you shouldn't be restricting access to firearms, not the people, not the people working. The people who you should restrict are the people who don't have a job, right? Because the people who don't have a job, they're the ones that are most likely to be, prone to crime, right? Arguably, you can have people that are in between jobs, possibly, or whatever, in a situation. A woman can be unemployed and and have the threat of a domestic abuser or something like that. But I'm just saying, we as black people, we vote for this shit. I mean, I can't make it any more clear than that. We vote for these laws. We vote for the mistreatment. And it just blows my mind at how black people don't get that. You're screaming how unfair. Oh, this is unfair. This is unfair. If this was a black man, he would be thrown underneath the bus. And I'm like, don't try to import what would happen don't try to import New York laws into what would happen. No, how do I say this? Don't try to import New York laws into Wisconsin and then claim what would happen, if it was a black man in Wisconsin underneath New York law. They're not underneath New York law. At best, you would get, a misdemeanor. At best. But if you import New York law into Wisconsin, they throw the book at them. And see, the thing is like, because of all the other emotional shit, that's what a lot of black people want to see. He went out there and, it's because he wanted to target Black Lives Matter protesters. Right? Now, even though it was 3 white people who got shot, they had nothing to do with black people, but because their hearts and minds were with black people in the George Floyd protests, Kyle Rittenhouse symbolically shot black people, right? And you have the white people doing the same thing on the other side, where, you got people, they don't know shit from piss when it comes to the Second Amendment. The only part so they're screaming, this is self-defense. Yeah, self-defense. They don't know shit about self-defense. They don't know shit about guns. They don't know shit about self-defense. But they're screaming it because, again, they agree with the sentiment, the energy that surrounds Kyle Rittenhouse, that this is a young white man, and we don't like those protesters because they're out here looting and burning and everything else, and we can't fucking stand them. And so if one of them gets shot, good, because that's what we want to see. That's what we really want to do in our hardest of hearts, because we're sick of this shit. We're sick of this shit. And again, you dive into all the, the white fragility and, how frazzled white people get when, you talk about race and talk about, what this country was founded on, which was racial inequality between white people and black people. That's a fact. But, so they get all frustrated in that. And, again, Kyle Rittenhouse becomes a symbol of that. So, this is what's going on. But again, my main focus of this video is on black people being more mindful of, what they vote for. You vote for all these gun control laws that black, men especially get slammed with. And I'm saying, look, we got problems in our own community when it comes to gun violence and shit like that. Some of these brothers need to be locked up and put in jail. But you got other brothers. It's like, what is the point of gun control laws, right? Seriously speaking, what is the point? The point is to stop criminals who engage in gun violence, right? But see, the thing is, the problem that I have with liberal gun laws, and especially in places like New York or New Jersey, there's no discretion. It's just like in New Jersey, where you had a black security guard who, I think he left his gun in his car or something like that. He got pulled over because he came back from work and then he put his gun in his glove compartment and then he was driving and he got pulled over. And the cop, basically arrested him, charged him with unlawful possession, even though he had the permit. He's a security guard, got the security guard uniform and everything. And they try to hit him with hollow points because in New Jersey, you can buy hollow points, you can possess hollow points, but you can't have them in any other situation where you're not able to have that gun, which is basically everywhere because they don't issue concealed carry permits in New Jersey. So you can go to the store, buy hollow points, take your hollow points home, put them in your magazine, and then put your gun by the nightstand and have hollow points. And if somebody, breaks into your home, and you can shoot them with those hollow points. But if you were to somehow, let's say you got in your car and you bought your new gun and then you bought some hollow points and then you went over to your friend Jimmy's house and you were like, hey man, look at my new gun. And somehow, you got pulled over or the cops showed up to Jimmy's house and you're not a resident of that home, you can get charged with unlawful possession. You can't even take your gun to somebody else's house to show it to them. That's how messed up the Jersey laws are. You can only take your firearm to and from the range or to and from a gun store. That's it. There's nothing else. You see, and again, so you can see how easily, a young black man that hasn't shot anybody, hasn't engaged in any crime, he can get caught up in that shit. And they will throw the book at him. And they'll think like, oh, we caught something. We stopped a violent criminal. No, you didn't. Again, there's no reasonable discretion. That's why when the liberals jump up and they're talking about reasonable gun laws, like this bullshit. There's nothing reasonable about it. It's just ban everything. Nobody should be able to have this and have that. And then you got all these black people living in high crime areas where they can't, protect themselves. Again, people want to talk about black on black violence or, white on white violence, even though that's not a term. Again, people attack, the people where that they live around, in the environments and the communities in which they live around. Majority of white people get attacked by white people. Majority of black people get attacked by black people because people attack people where they live. Yes, are there disparities between the communities? Yes, are there more black people who will go off and try to rob white people? Yes, because of the, economic disparities, of course. You know what I mean? But generally speaking, people stay, within the confines of their own community, and that's where you're going to see the majority, of the violence. So I'm saying that to say that for black people, yeah, there are going to be, like, when you go out there as a black person and you buy a gun, it is more likely that you will use that gun against another black person than, some, white supremacist hiding in the bushes somewhere trying to get you. It's the same argument that, like, you have when you have these feminists that jump up and they're like, oh, men are potential rapists. And the reality is that, if a woman's ever raped, she's most likely going to be raped by, a person that she knows than, Chester the molester who's hiding in a bush somewhere, or some homeless dude that attacks a woman and violates her, like what happened to that, that Black Lives Matter woman protester in New York. You know what I'm saying? Like the most acts of rape are not random. They're intimate partner violence, however you want to describe it. You see, but again, the gun situation is the same thing. If you live in Bronx or Queens or you live in North Philly, chances are, and they just had a case like this in Philadelphia, where somebody tried to break into a house and they popped their ass. Yeah, and the homeowner popped, the person trying to break into the house, and that's all she wrote. And it's like, based on the area, it's like, yeah, probably was a black person protecting themselves from another black person. But see, we don't like to have those conversations in the face of white supremacy. And quiet as it's kept, white people don't either. As I've said before, people always get triggered when it's another group, but they somehow want to ignore or not get triggered when it's internal. When there's white on white violence, you never hear white people jumping up and down about white on white violence and what's going on in the middle of Appalachia or what's going on in, these, Midwestern places. Anytime you watch those what is it? Those damn murder shows and something like that, they'll be like, in a small town where everything was quiet, right? Whenever they do those, that's white on white. That is always white on white. Some husband, he tried to, kill his wife and get away with it, or, it was, some other act of violence and of some known perpetrator that, had his sights on somebody and, was stalking or something like that. White on white. Anytime you watch those murder mysteries, it is white on white. But yet, let white people tell it, they're like, oh, there's a black criminal around every corner, like, it's just ridiculous. And Fox News plays that up. They had this woman recently, she got hit by a stray bullet in Chicago. I think it was Chicago, and they could just, and she was reading a Bible to her children, and she was hit by a stray bullet, and then they got to show the picture of the black youth, and see these black people, just, oh, I'm so sick of the fucking media. I'm so goddamn sick of it, but it's just something to think about. I mean, it's just funny to me listening to black people talk about how black people are mistreated in the justice system. And I'm like, but the justice system is that, coming from all these black people that are so mad about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, is the justice system that they vote for in their own cities. You trying to impose what goes on in New York on, some other area of the country. And I'm like, it doesn't, I get what you're saying because of the track record and the long history, but I'm like, it doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden hate guns. If there was a black person that got be a black person and get caught up on, so you're not going to be able to make an appeal to Kamala Harris. You're not going to be able to make an appeal to Joe Biden and be like, oh, but I'm black and I got caught up. And it's like, oh, what'd you get caught up for? Well, I had a gun because I lived in a high crime area and I just wanted to protect myself. Sorry, no, nigga. You know what I mean? Like, that would be the end of it, because we can't support you on that, because we hate guns and anything that has to do with guns. We must flame you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, damn, like, but that's how it is. We must throw you underneath the bus. We're not touching that. You know what I mean? And that's exactly how it would go down, because they gotta, no, we gotta play we're the party of gun control. It doesn't matter if a black person, actually protect. Seriously speaking, like, how many of them came out, with the capes for Kenneth Walker? Quiet as is kept. I saw more white conservatives that were like, wait a minute, the police came in there. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say it was armies of them. It wasn't armies of them, but I talked about the cognitive dissonance that happens a lot of time with these gun issues, because these white guys, they run around, from my cold dead hand, give me liberty or give me death. The tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants, right? They up there talking about how, these government officials, while black people are running around talking about defund the police, these white people are running around talking about defund the ATF. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, you got these, the white people, they go up there and you start talking about, okay, what's the story? What's the story, Blackie? And it's like, okay, so the police, they came, they knocked unannounced, and, they raided the apartment, and it was the, some people say it was the wrong apartment. Some people say that, Breonna Taylor, she had connections to, the Jamarcus Glover. That's my position. But anyway, it was a botched raid. Okay. So cops went in there, guns drawn. Kenneth Walker, again, any reasonable person, you're in bed with your girlfriend. Hell, you might think it's Jamarcus, right? Because he was the, ex-boyfriend drug dealer. You're like, shit, this nigga's mad, I'm fucking his ex. Oh, shit. So you get up with your gun and the door busts in, bam. You thinking, it's the ops. So you let off a shot, right? Hits one of the cops, right? The cops return fire. Breonna Taylor, unfortunately, gets gunned down, right? That's the story. That story like that, there's a lot of white people that they have cognitive dissonance because they don't want to side with black people, but at the same time, I don't know about this government officials kicking in front doors, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Texas, you know what I mean? Like they start having their, anti-government, sort of attitudes. But, what we've noticed over, same thing with Philando Castile, it's like, whenever there's government overreach, whenever there's police overreach, white people are hella hesitant to get on board. And you might have a couple, some Second Amendment purists that get on board, but, in terms of like the fanfare that you see behind, Kyle Rittenhouse, no, you're not going no, you're not going to see that. I mean, I will say that the Second Amendment community in New Jersey came out, for the security guard. I even did a video on them, for the security guard, in Jersey that, he's black, young black security guard. And I don't know if I said he was black before, but yeah, he was black. And, they tried to, the state tried to throw the book at it. It's like, yo, this doesn't even make sense. Like, that's how eager the prosecutors in Jersey are, to try to, charge somebody, with these sorts of gun crimes. Now, I've talked to some police officers, and some of them are just kind of like, well, they have their own belief systems. They have their own discretion. And, it depends on who you talk to. Some cops are like, man, like with like Governor Murphy, he reduced the magazine capacity. I know some cops that they're not going to charge anybody with, magazine, having over, like if they have the 15 rounds that they had before and they just never went and got it pinned or whatever, they don't care about that shit. It depends on what they're showing up at the house. I had to, he was white, the dad was white, but anyway, the cops, the son, he's got emotional problems. And so, the police, they recognize, they said, oh, they got guns in the house and the son is having emotional problems. We can't have the firearms in the house. So the cops went to go confiscate the firearms, just one of those guns that are for home protection, dust and cobwebs, off over. It was like a Gen 1 Glock. Like, who has a Gen 1 Glock? You know what I mean? You can sell that and get some money for it. But anyway, dad had a Gen 1 Glock, but he had the 17 round, magazine. He had a Glock 17 with the 17 round magazine, right? And the cop was just like, yeah, put that away. Now the cop, could have or should have, hit him with well, you have, 7 more rounds in your magazine, but the cop was like, nah, we didn't come here for that, so it depends on discretion. But, like I said, I had one cop just tell me, he was like, look, let's say you get charged with, I don't know, some bullshit, okay? And then we got to come to the premises, and then we discover, during discovery, we discover, magazine. Like, let's say some guy got hit with like child pornography or something like that. And they go and they get the shit to search the premises, and they find, extended magazines. Oh, they're going to tack that on. That's going to be added on top of, the child porn. You see what I'm saying? That's how the discretion, works. But again, it just depends on what cop you get. Cops do have discretion, contrary to popular belief. But it just depends. It depends on the culture it depends on the individual police officer. It depends on the culture of the police department. It depends on the culture of the state. It depends on whether there's Republicans in power or whether there's Democrats in power. It depends on a lot of shit. It depends on if there's rewards and pats on the head for, law enforcement to, basically, charge people with gun charges. And sometimes it can get so, they can get so overzealous with it that, it's like, okay, just give me any gun charge. We need gun charges. Just give me any gun charge. And it's like, but what you should be dealing with is right, the inner city, right, black kids that are, shooting each other, right? And it's like, how do they go about doing that? They try to play dumb. They're like, well, how do you expect us to enforce the inner city if there's, no snitching and we can't engage in stop and frisk? It's like, you don't have to go around violating people's, rights with random, Terry stops and shit like that. Just to enforce, this sort of, the law. Again, I argue that they don't want to deal with the root cause of all the gun violence in the black community, which is the poverty. Black people keep going out here voting for the Democrats, and I'm like, how long is this going to go on for? Because this has been this way since I was a child, Okay, black people go, oh, we gonna vote for the Democrats, and shit's gonna change, and it doesn't change. And then again, stiffer penalties, more gun laws and everything. And all that ends up happening is more and more black men go to jail, more and more black men become prohibited persons, more and more black men become felons, and then more and more black men are basically utterly useless, to black men, because now they got this scarlet letter of a felony on their person, and they can't go out there and become gainfully employed to provide and take care of their family, which ends up turning into a revolving door and a vicious cycle that facilitates more, teenage, black teenage youth to, resort to a life of crime, because they're growing up with their, single mom who's typically in poverty, and their dad who can't be gainfully employed, or who is not there or absent because he's running around in the streets, or ends up getting shot and killed because he's running around in the streets, or ends up in jail because he's running around in the streets because he can't, get out of, being a felon, right? We don't have, we talk about justice reform, but what we really need to be talking about is we need to talk about, prison reform, or people's records being expunged, after a particular, period of time, especially nonviolent felonies, which is the vast majority of what black men are arrested for, nonviolent felonies. So, you see how quickly, white people in many of these states enacted, these sort of, we're charging the drug dealers with the death of people, I'm like, what happened to personal responsibility? That just went out the door, you see. But that's because, fentanyl has hit the white community harder than it's hit the black community. And, they, again, to have this idea of, the face of black, of drug dealers is still, black men, even though we've seen a number of white fentanyl drug dealers. And, they're just like, I'm going to charge these black men with the killing of, white children. But you see how fast they got that shit through. But yeah, black people can't seem to get a bill through that says, if you've been convicted of a non-violent felon, and you've been clean and not gotten into trouble for, let's just say, 3 years, then, that does not show up on your background check when you go to apply for a job. It's like the whole process is to basically bar men out of the job market. Hell, even the whole fugitive, prohibited person from a gun, that only came to be in 1968. They didn't have that shit before, and the whole, background and Nix check and all that shit, because of all the race riots that were going on in 68. But yeah, like I said, black people, y'all gotta stop being so goddamn emotional. You gotta stop running with I'm saying, look, racism is still there, white supremacy is still there, but when you're trying to make your point, make it make sense. Make it make sense. You vote for these, throw the book at them gun laws, which again disproportionately affect black people. Where do you think they're going to enforce these gun laws? You think they're going to go to the white communities to enforce these gun laws that you vote for when you get your democratically elected politicians in the office? Go ahead, pull up your Sheila Jackson. She don't like guns. Pull up your Maxine Waters. She don't like guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the other dude? Clyde, South Carolina. None of them. None of these old niggas like guns, but yet they run around talking about, we lived it. We went through the civil rights movement and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, and who were you fighting? You were fighting racism and white supremacy, right? You know what I mean? Harriet Tubman would be rolling over in her grave. She carried a pistol. You see? And again, a lot of it also has to do with the idea that, a lot of these old black people, they don't want, young black people challenging them, and they don't want young black people, having guns and whatnot. They want to be the ancient ones, I mean, these people are on their way out the door. You know, I mean, they're all well into their 70s and 80s. They're on their way out the door, and they haven't done not one thing to empower, today's, black people and today's black youth. I mean, it's so pathetically sad, and yet black people still up there voting for them. And then not only that, you got this whole gender issue. You got black women, they are heavy on the Democratic plantation. Black men are, we're exploring our options. We're looking in the other direction. I'm like, what is left for us, in the black community? Anti black male masculinity. Pro LGBT. And knowing damn well, especially as black men and who've been, bathing in hyper masculinity, I'm like, yeah, you can't ungay. We can't entertain that shit. I was listening to Pink Handbook, earlier today, and she was addressing, this woman calling in, or this guy calling in the Young Jock show who was talking about stuff stuck in his teeth, and the woman said that, she had to leave and walk away from the date. And what was the point I was going to bring up? Oh, and I remember. Yeah. And she was calling the dude. She was, basically, the dude, he didn't have a real strong masculine presence. You could kind of hear it in his voice. And, the woman was calling him spicy tuna. I guess that's the Atlanta way of saying that he's sweet. She was like, it's always she was mad because he said, he was kind of upset, and he was like, these black women say that they want a black man that's established and got his own home and take him on trips and everything else. And then she's going to disqualify me because the way I was playing with my straw. He was saying that it was just petty, but he got upset, and he basically, called him out on it. And a woman called in, and she was like, it's always these spicy niggas. You know what I mean? I was like, spicy? Oh, you mean he's sweet? Oh, okay. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, it just makes no sense. In one breath, yeah, we got to support the Democrats and LGBTQ and all this other shit. And then the minute a black woman doesn't like something a black man says, that nigga gay. You know what I mean? Like, you can't win. But like I said, if you go on MSNBC, CNN, you're going to see nothing but a whole bunch of sisters up there talking. I mean, the amount of black women on MSNBC is just, it's like insane. It's just like black women. And then whenever they get a black man up there, he's always got some feminine energy, friggin' Roland Martin's trying to get his spot back and whatnot. It's always feminine energy. And you see what happened to even the ones with the feminine energy, Roland Martin and Mark Lamont Hill, they got out of there. And it was so funny is, talking about Jewish people is what got Mark Lamont Hill kicked off of, CNN and MSNBC, right? Because we know who runs that shit. And then only for him to go to the black news channel or whatever. And then he's up there talking about, yeah, black people, we got to support Israel because, we got to recognize that there's transracial oppressions. And it's like, wait, what? Again, you start seeing who's pulling the strings. But anyway, I've made my point, about this whole thing. I'm just saying, black people, we need to stop being so goddamn emotional. But anyway, this video is long enough. So that's my video. SWP out.